And one of the most unlikely turn of events, the Mariners just played one of their best all-around games of the year. Go figure. Unfortunately, the Arizona Diamondbacks did not get the memo, so no clinch opportunity tomorrow night for Seattle. And the Mariners will now face elimination from here on out. Let's talk about it here on the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is once again Friday, September 29th, 2023. This is Nathan Eovaldi and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you so much for making us your first listen after the game. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. 8-0 the final score from T-Mobile Park. Mariners play one of their best games of the year across the board, especially given the circumstances in this one. Not just what it meant for their playoff hopes either, but obviously the opponent they did it against, and the fact that, Bryan Woo started this game. We're going to get to the big offensive night from Seattle, as well as, what happened around the league later on in the show. But we have to start with Woo. I mean, that was the biggest storyline heading into this game. We spent a whole segment talking about, our concerns, our issues with Woo starting this game earlier today. But, this has been a bad matchup for Woo. But tonight, while he only went 3 2/3, Colby, and he was walking, the tightrope for most of that time, a lot of traffic on the base pass, quite a few walks, kept the Rangers off the board. I mean, that's absolutely massive. Colby, thoughts on Woo and this Mariners bullpen as a whole tonight?
Yeah, Woo definitely understood the assignment. There was no guessing what Woo's game plan was tonight. He was going to go after these guys, and he was going to be really fine. He was going to be on the corners, maybe even off the corners a little bit. And if he walked a guy, fine. If he had to run deep counts, fine. He just wasn't going to leave pitches in the middle of the plate against these guys, because he knew that he didn't have to go through this lineup 3 times. You don't have to save something for the 3rd time through the order. You don't have to worry about having a quick inning here or there, because you're not deep for this game. You're not going to stick around that long. Scott was apparently pretty clear pregame that it was going to be, they would really, really like to get 4 out of him. And they were prepared. They had, if we have to have a quick hook, we're going to have it. And, and it was pretty scary in the first, and it got a little dicey in the top of the 3rd, but Woo worked his way through it all those times. He never gave in. He didn't just pipe a fastball to avoid a walk. He was very conscious of what his job was, and that was to get, as many outs as you could without giving up runs. So, tonight he gave you 11 outs. I'm sure, in August, he's probably pitching the 4th and maybe even the 5th. And he's going to go deeper in that game, but he knew tonight that his job was just to get outs. It wasn't to get deep in the game. It was to hand a lead over to the bullpen. And thankfully the offense stepped up, and Woo was solid. Again, he pitched to the game plan. He pitched to the role perfectly. 5 strikeouts, 3 walks, a lot of 3-ball counts, a lot of long at bats. But again, that is understanding the assignment of what he needed to do tonight. And it went right after, guys. It was fastball and it was cutter. Those were the 2 pitches. Threw the fastball 49% of the time. He threw the cutter another 30% of the time. Actually got really good results on the cutter. But he still did generate a 35% whiff rate on the 4-seamer, which is a really good ratio for a 4-seam fastball. Mm-hmm. So again, Woo, not going to tell you he was great tonight. There was a lot of, traffic. He walked 3 guys and, 3 2/3. That's a lot.
Yep.
But again, it was very clear that he understood his role tonight. He understood what his assignment was, what his job was tonight, and he executed that game plan and that role essentially to perfection. It wraps up a really good rookie year for him. And my assumption is that he will be demoted tomorrow, which is just to get an extra arm in the bullpen. Perliner Burrow is with the club on the taxi squad. You could send Woo down tomorrow, put Burrow on the roster. And if you do sneak into the playoffs, you could just put Woo on your roster, or you could, you just put him back on. So you're not burning an option or anything like that. It's totally fine. And it's not a punishment. It's just that if Woo's not available to pitch out of the bullpen the next couple days, which he probably won't be after he just threw 82 pitches, then he really doesn't need to be on this team. But yeah, tonight, again, understood the assignment, executed it perfectly, and gave Scott Service exactly what he needed and what was, even in the realm of reasonable to expect from Bryan Woo.
Yeah, I mean, look, you could argue that if he went the full 4, or maybe even 5, that would be a more perfect outcome here. But I think this is as good as you possibly could have hoped for, especially given all the, things we talked about on today's episode. Yeah, just a brilliant game plan from Woo that didn't necessarily execute to full perfection, but was still very, very, very good for what the Mariners needed tonight. And this bullpen, they do walk 5 guys combined, but when you keep an offense like Texas at bay, I mean, this is the 17th shutout victory for the Mariners tonight. When you keep an offense like Texas at bay, keep them at a fat, big fat goose egg on the scoreboard, that's amazing. Amazing night for the Mariners pitching staff, especially given the circumstances of everything.
Right. I think, one other thing that, we should talk about tonight is that you didn't have to use Brash tonight at any point. You didn't even have to get him up and ready to go. You didn't have to use Spire tonight. You didn't have to use Munoz tonight. So when you look ahead to this weekend, Brash hasn't pitched in 2 days. He's going to be ready to go on Saturday and Sunday. Andres Munoz has thrown 4 pitches in the last 2 days. He's going to be ready to go. The last 3 days, he's thrown 4 pitches. So your big guns were protected. You didn't need to use them tonight, which is great. That's better than you could have ever hoped for, because I think we were all assuming that, Munoz and Brash, they might have to go 3 days in a row, and you just kind of have to live with what happens there. But again, the fact that they're going to be so well rested for this weekend, you should be able to go multiple innings with both of them. And the fact that tonight you probably burned Thornton for tomorrow, and that's it. That's a pretty good night for the bullpen. Not perfect again, but it's an 8-0 win. You didn't have to use any of your big guns. Nobody threw a ton of pitches that they can't recover from. And it was relatively smooth sailing. You never gave them much of a shot to get back in the game.
Yep. And now you get to hand the ball over to Luis Castillo, who has to be Luis Castillo tomorrow. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Luis Castillo has to be that dude tomorrow night against this Texas Rangers lineup. And then George Kirby on Sunday, assuming that the Mariners are still in a spot to get into the postseason heading into that day, because now that the Astros have won, you face elimination from here on out the next 2 days. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for now, we're going to switch gears and look at this offense, which dropped 8 on the heads of Nathan Eovaldi and Brock Burke tonight. Go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners postgame show is brought to you by Sleeper. All right, folks, the MLB playoffs are right around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Pick more or less on stats for your favorite players like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to a 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big, my friend. If things didn't go well in your home league this year, no worries. You can still salvage the fantasy baseball season over at Sleeper. There you can pick the players you want and call your shot. And when you use the promo code Locked On, that's LOCKEDON, you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 8-0 victory over the Texas Rangers. You can catch Game 3 of this series on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app tomorrow night. Colby, the Mariners didn't necessarily do a ton of damage against Jordan Montgomery, but they overcame his start. And then they overcame the Nathan Eovaldi start tonight. And that's huge because John Gray just went on the IL, which means the Rangers, according to friend of the show and host of the Locked On Rangers podcast, Bryce Paterick, it's going to be 2 bullpen nights for the Rangers for the rest of this series. So that's the worst bullpen in baseball. So you're in a pretty good spot here. You're going to be throwing Castillo and Kirby. They're going to be throwing one of the worst bullpen units I've seen in a very, very long time. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's talk about this offense tonight in general. Ty France solo home run, big night for Josh Rojas, who had a solo home run as well in the same inning, and then a couple innings later drove in a run with bases loaded, which set up the JP Crawford grand slam off of Brock Burke. JP just doing the damn thing again tonight. He's been incredible. And I know you don't agree with this, Colby, but it was a great night for the Mariners offense.
It was good.
They scored 8 runs.
Yeah, they struck out 12 times. Didn't do anything aside from, the third and the fourth inning. But, but here's the deal with that is that it's actually just a continuation of what we've seen from the previous 160 games. It's that the Mariners offense, they're not going to create a ton of traffic every single inning they go out there. You're going to get 2 or 3 really good chances every night to score runs. And typically when they do, they're going to score 5 or 6 and probably win that game. And when they don't, it's going to be a really frustrating loss. And that's why all the bases loaded failures get magnetized because there's so few, opportunities like that. So tonight was one of those nights. They only had 2 legitimate shots to score in this game. And they did. And not only did they score, they scored multiple runs, and they did it with extra base hits instead of walks and singles. So when you look at, the box score tonight, only 6 hits. They struck out 12 times. Those numbers are not typically going to get you 8 runs. But again, this is why we talk about, not all hits are created equal, and why batting average with runners in scoring position, not necessarily the best stat, because a home run with a runner on first is better than a single with a runner on second, right? So it's just one of those things. Tonight they played the long ball game. You look at Ty France hit an absolute line shot into the cantina, which is nice to see. Ty looks like he's starting to figure some stuff out. He's been pretty good the last 4 or 5 days. Josh Rojas, he followed it up with a solo homer to right field. He's been a really solid addition to this ball club. Also, Rojas had an RBI single the next inning after, bases loaded and the first guy doesn't get it done. And you're sitting there like, oh boy, here we go. And then Rojas moves the line forward. And then obviously JP with the big hit for the second night in a row, essentially ices the game right there in the fourth. A lefty on lefty grand slam for JP's 19th homer of the year.
Yep.
And that's all you needed. And thankfully you got that because again, Julio wasn't good tonight. Teoscar, not all that good. Cal Raleigh didn't have a great night. Props to Gino. He got that scorching double on what we'll charitably describe as an interesting route by a really good center fielder. So that's how hard he hit that ball that he fooled him. But yeah, for the most part, offense, they did all their damage in 2 innings. And that's good, because they only got 2 chances really to put up runs, and they put up 8. That's fantastic. You do that every time, nobody's going to complain except for me. But just something to watch tomorrow. 12 strikeouts, only a couple walks, 6 hits. You got to create a little bit more traffic, unless here's the caveat: unless you're going to hit a grand slam, then yeah, who cares? Doesn't matter how many hits you get. Get grand slams, who cares? So the Mariners offense tonight, solid. Wasn't their best game of the year, but definitely more than enough to win this game. And it's kind of funny, it's 7-9-1, provide all the power, in tonight's game. And there are 3 guys that aren't particularly known for power, except for, maybe JP Crawford, the P, of course, standing for power. So
Naturally.
Yes. You realize that we're 1 home run away from saying JP Crawford is a 20 home run shortstop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can basically say that now if you want.
Yeah.
19's close enough.
Yeah, he's got 20 home run pop. That's what we can say about JP. And it was a really solid night for the Mariners offense, and you hope that they continue it. Tomorrow, especially like you said, with bullpen days back to back, and they have some guys who can go deep in these games. They have Heaney, who's start.
Yeah, so right. Evan Grant Rangers beat reporter just tweeted out that Andrew Heaney will be starting tomorrow. Heaney has, of course, started a lot. Hasn't started since September 4th, though. So it's been a little while. He's been working out of the bullpen exclusively for the last 3 or so weeks. But he's going to get the start. He has really struggled against the Mariners in his last 5 outings against them. 7.04 ERA during that time. But what this does mean, potentially, that Scott Service is going to roll out that lovely lineup with Sam Haggerty and Dylan Moore and right-handed Cal Raleigh hitting 7th for some reason, and Dylan Moore hitting 5th for some reason, and
Dylan Moore is the worst player on this team right now, and I don't think it's close.
Is that including pitchers? Because I think it's still Dominic Leone, but
I mean, I don't know. I probably trust Leone more than I trust Demo right now, but I don't
know about that one.
Honestly, like, why can't Josh Rojas get a start against a lefty? Like, I mean, come on. Like, why does it have to be, and it'll be Caballero, who hasn't been very good either.
And also, like, Heaney's going to go what? 4 innings?
Probably
3
3 or
innings?
4, yeah.
Because, I mean, like, he's probably still stretched out enough to do that, but not stretched out enough to go 5, 6, 7.
No.
Depending on pitch count, but yeah.
Heaney's a guy who gets a lot of strikeouts. He works deep counts, and it's kind of Eric Bedard-like, only not as good, but...
Right.
It's I'll go 5 and I'm going to strike out 8, but I'm not going to be able to go 6. That's kind of Heaney's thing. But yeah, Heaney can go multiple innings. Martin Perez or Martin?
Yeah. Martin
Perez.
Yeah.
He can go multiple innings too, and he'll probably start Sunday's game. They also have, I think it's Corey Bradford, who got a spot start in Anaheim 4 or 5 days ago. But yeah, it's Mariners offense, solid night tonight. They're going to have an opportunity to do it again on Saturday, Sunday, and they're probably going to have to. I don't think it's fair to expect Luis Castillo to pitch 7 shutout innings against, this lineup. Just because Bryan Woo and Taylor Saucedo can do it doesn't mean everybody can. So
right.
Yeah. But no, it was a good night for the offense. There was long stretches where they were having terrible at bats, but you scored 8. So
yeah, it's just, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but watching Julio's at bats is genuinely depressing right now. Most of them are looking very similar to one another.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's 3 for his last 23, 3 for his last 24, with like 11 strikeouts during that stretch.
Yeah, you consider moving him down? Like from 2 to 3.
I mean, who's
Ty France?
Who's the better option? I don't know. There's still so much upside there.
Dylan Moore, obviously.
Right. Sam Haggerty, yeah.
Hey,
Ford.
Haggerty is giving you better at bats right now than Julio, though. To be fair.
Yeah.
That's just a factual statement. That's not hyperbole.
Yeah,
that's a factual statement.
That's a problem.
It's a big problem. But no, I mean, Julio's your guy. You're rolling with him for the last 2 games.
Yeah, no. The upside there is still
he can still win
good.
you a game by himself.
Yeah. Julio will. Yeah. Like he's still more than capable of being that guy. He just needs to actually be that guy. That'd be nice if Julio could just be that guy for just a couple games, just a couple more games.
Yep.
And then, if we can get into the playoffs, and you probably need him to be that guy for a little longer, but he's more than capable of doing that. That's what makes this so frustrating.
It is indeed. And also makes it frustrating is that you're getting a pretty good Geno the last 3 or 4 days.
And a pretty good Ty France.
And a pretty good Ty France, like we said they needed to. Yeah. Unfortunately, your pitching, aside from the last 2 nights, has been pretty much trash. But, 3 of the last 4 nights, the Mariners pitching has been very good. Yep. You just needed to do it 2 more times, and you need some help from Arizona, which we'll tell you why.
We'll tell you in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners postgame show is brought to you by DoorDash. And I said it right this time. Yay. Need fresh groceries for the week, but don't have the time to go to the store? Try grocery delivery from DoorDash. You'll get everything you want delivered when you need it right to your door. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, or we'll make it right. So sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. With easy substitutions right in the app and best in-class customer support, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use promo code LOCKEDONMLB at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Don't forget, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 8-0 shutout victory over the Texas Rangers. You can catch game 3 of this series between the Mariners and the Rangers on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app tomorrow night. So it's time to talk about what happened around the league. I don't have good news for you. Sorry to say. It's all bad news. It's not terrible news. It's not end of the world news just yet, but it's not good news. So the Toronto Blue Jays defeated the Tampa Bay Rays tonight by a score of 11-4, which means now that if the Blue Jays win a game, they're going to clinch. You are no longer going to be able to tie them, catch them, whatever. And the Astros got pretty lucky tonight. The Diamondbacks were horrific offensively for the first 7 innings of that game. Then they started to make some noise in the 8th. They had runners at second and third, 2 outs against Hector Neris, which would have been incredibly funny had he blown that. But of course, Jeremy Pena made a diving play to end the threat. And then in the 9th, Ryan Presley was pretty much cruising. Jose Altuve committed an error that puts Alec Thomas. Yeah, it was Alec Thomas. Alec Thomas on first base, but he was able to get the next 2 outs. Gabriel Moreno stepped to the plate and hit a ball that would have been a home run in 28 ballparks, except for Chase Field. He missed a game-tying home run by about a foot, and then Jace Peterson proceeded to ground out, and the Astros hang on to win 2-1. The good news for Mariners fans on the Diamondbacks front is that they did not clinch a playoff berth tonight. So they are going to be pedal to the floor tomorrow, even though that the Cubs are going to start about an hour before them as well as the Reds. Those 2 games obviously are going to have a big impact on the Diamondbacks playoff hopes. But they are going to go with Merrill Kelly against Justin Verlander. And Verlander, while he had a lot of success against the Mariners his last time out, has not been particularly great. This is probably Cope. I'm just going to preface that this is probably Cope, but he hasn't been particularly great his last few times out. He got shelled by the A's recently. He got shelled by the Yankees recently. So Verlander can be had, and the Diamondbacks are obviously a very talented offense with guys like Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now, as a result of this, the Mariners are facing elimination from the rest of the way here. In order for them to be eliminated tomorrow, they would need to lose, and the Astros need to win. So a couple of things need to happen in order for that to all go down. But yeah, this would be great if Arizona could provide a little more offense than they did tonight, because I think Merrill Kelly has a pretty good chance against this Astros offense, but yeah, the Diamondbacks need to score some runs here. So what did you think about all of it? I know that you watched the Arizona game tonight. That was brutal. That was brutal, man.
Yeah, Tommy Pham had what probably would have been a game-tying base hit.
Yep.
And, Jeremy Pena, who's kind of the new, like, Luis Valbuena in that, like, he's not very good, but when it comes to hurting the Mariners, he is Mike Trout.
He's elite.
Like, yeah. So yeah, Pena makes that play, a pretty good play. If that had gotten through, it probably would have scored 2 runs. Arizona is a very athletic team. And then, yeah, the Moreno home run, he certainly thought he got it. I was watching it, and I'm like, McCormick.
Yeah, he was pimping it. He was pimping it.
McCormick looks like he had a beat on it. I was like, I think he's going to fall. I think it's going to die right at the wall. And then it just hit, like, I think a foot below the yellow line.
He just had to hit it to the deepest part of the ballpark.
Yeah. If he hooks it at all, it's out of there. And maybe we're celebrating tonight. So yeah, that was a bummer. So, the Mariners playoff path pretty much remains the same.
Yep.
They still have a shot at 3, a shot at 3 playoff spots. They can still win the American League West. And again, the way they do that is they win the next 2 and Houston splits these last 2. And if they do that, if that happens, we've called that the Infinity Saga probability or the Infinity Saga scenario. Then you just won the division in a 3-way tie. The other thing that could happen is Seattle could win, 2, the next 2, and Houston goes 1-1. And in that case, you're in. Mm-hmm. Seattle could also win 1 of the next 2, and Houston could lose the next 2. And that would get you into the playoffs. And also, probably the least likely is Toronto loses the next 2 games, you win the next 2, and you would get in as the tiebreaker. But
the Houston going 1-1 and you going 2-0 thing, that's the division winning timeline, whatever.
Yep.
But which is the funniest outcome and absolutely the thing that I'm rooting for. Honestly, like if the Astros lose tomorrow and the Mariners win, I might be rooting for the Astros to win on Sunday. Like I just might.
You have to win too. But at the end of the day, I think for a real shot, like a legitimate shot, you have to win the next 2. Even if you lose tomorrow and Houston loses tomorrow, then Houston has to lose 2 in a row. Arizona probably will have clinched at that point. Texas will have clinched at that point. So Toronto would have clinched at that point too. So you're kind of hoping for a miracle there. Again, it's not going to be easy. It's Verlander versus Kelly. That certainly favors the Astros, but Kelly's been pretty good himself. And then Christian Javier is set to get the start on Sunday against, I think, Brandon Pfaadt. I think that's how you pronounce his last name, but we'll see how it goes. But all you can do is control what you can control, win the next 2. And there's going to be a couple openings, a couple avenues to get you into the playoffs. So it all starts with tomorrow. You got to find a way to win. Again, it would be nice if you could have found a way to, win an extra game so that you kind of have this breathing room. But the only thing that really changed tonight is you now have no shot to clinch a playoff spot tomorrow night. So it'll come down to game 162 unless you lose and Houston wins, because of course it will.
That sounds just absolutely fun.
I mean,
so
the
fun.
Mariners have never gotten to game 162 and had it not go their way, especially when they need somebody else to lose for them.
Oh yeah.
That's never happened.
Yep.
But so we'll see how it goes. But again, you have to win. And what's kind of frustrating about this, Ty?
What?
Remember back in August, we were sitting here and we were getting asked questions like, how many wins does it take for the Mariners to get to the playoffs? And we're both like, I think 90. I think you got to get to 90 to pretty much, guarantee yourself a playoff spot. Well, guess what, Ty? If they had gotten to 90, they would have clinched a playoff spot. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. But
I'm living in Spain. The S is silent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera.
Yeah.
But not et cetera. But no, I mean, like at the end of the day, you got to win. You got to win your next 2. That's your only shot.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of let the cards fall where they may. And
gotta believe in the heart of the cards.
Sure. I would still say there's a high probability that we're talking to you guys on Monday about, a team that just missed the playoffs. They fell a game or 2 short again and do all that stuff. But, you never know. They certainly given themselves a shot. And again, there is still an outside shot that the funniest timeline, by the way, actually would be Houston splits, Seattle sweeps, and Toronto loses the next 2, because then you'd have 4 teams tied at 89 wins. And in that scenario, that only scenario, Houston is out.
Yep. And you win the division.
And you still win the division. So, but so there's still some fun scenarios, but at the end of the day, your most likely path to the playoffs is still you win 2, Houston splits the next 2. And that's really the highest probability shot you have. And even that, I mean, after tonight,
yeah, look, we're probably 24 or 48 hours, well, less than that, a little bit less than that, away from a harsh reality. But I'm gonna dream for now. I'm gonna think about that. 1 and 14.5 billion in a chance. That one timeline where we defeat Thanos,
14,600,005.
and Thanos in this particular instance is, of course, the Houston Astros. It is 1:54 a.m. here, folks. I am delirious, so we are going to hop off.
Yeah, because
Thank you. Shut up. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners post-game show. You're the worst. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dan Gonzalez, it's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, CBAT11. I can see you down there in the little box in the corner. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 8-0 victory over the Texas Rangers. Again, you can catch game 3 of this series on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. Wow. Have yourself a beautiful baseball evening, and we'll see you next time. Peace. Jesus.